Let's take it to Marco Vicenzino now. He's a geopolitical risk specialist and a global strategy advisor. He joins us live from London. Good to have you with us. And try and squeeze in as many questions as I can on my long sheet here, but time is getting short. First of all, what would be, since we seem to be now talking about, shall we say, a more possible reality scenario of a US attack on Iran than maybe 24 hours ago, what would be the strategic goal of a US attack on Iran? Destroying the nuclear sites, destroying nuclear and missile sites, or all of that plus collapsing the government?
That's actually a debate that goes to the administration itself, where you have one side basically backed by, you could say, Vice President Vance, usually calling for more defensive measures. And then on the other side, you probably have, you would see is more of the traditional Republican establishment, largely represented by Marco Rubio. And I think that debate, that very question is being debated right now. One of the reasons why President Trump left the G7 summit earlier, a day earlier, much of it was to have to do was to go and be with his advisors and to start making tough decisions. And I think on this part, so you have those who really, first and foremost, I think most agree, at least in the Western world, that the G7 summit was made clear also was basically the ending of the nuclear program of Iran, so denuclearization. Second would be the ballistic missiles. But the large debate is on that third element, regime change. There's many who would say, go now, implement it, participate with Israel, and get rid of the regime and try to end their program. On the other hand, you have others with a different view, basically saying, go for the nuclear issue, but don't go for regime change, because if you go for regime change, we may be into a scenario where maybe just worse leadership than the status quo. Then people would, critics would point to issues like Iraq and other operations.
Sorry, Marco, I'm going to jump in for a second. Stay with me for a second, sure. Marco, but we've got some lines dropping here that I think we need to bring to viewers, and that is that Iran's supreme leader has been speaking, and he's saying Iran will not accept an imposed peace or an imposed war. And he's gone on to say that the US should know that Iran will not surrender, that any US strike will have serious, irreparable consequences. When we look at statements like that, Marco, it doesn't sound like the Iranians are feeling moved, intimidated by Donald Trump's threats, by Donald Trump's demands for a complete surrender. If this goes then to a confrontation, how certain is the US that it can destroy all Iranian nuclear installations, all Iranian missile facilities, even if it uses, some of the weaponry it has, like these GBU-57 or even the B-61-11, the nuclear-tipped bunker busters?
Yeah, basically the regime, the rhetoric coming out of the regime is primarily motivated by survival. Its main thing is for the self-preservation and the survival of the regime. It is an existential moment for the regime in Iran, so it has to use this rhetoric for posturing and for the sake of credibility, saving face internally. Much it has to do. Now, if you bring it externally, the question is right now, I think the debate is that you'd be very different. Fordo, which has where the enrichment is taking place, it's very, very deep. And those bunker buster missiles that can be thrown in, there's not 100% guarantee that can take them all out. So the question is that do you use them to downgrade it as much as possible, reduce and downgrade as much as possible, but at the same time pursue a regime change with the hope that you get a regime that comes into power that can start to really negotiate seriously on ending it. This is all just thoughts and ideas amongst people debating in the inner circles of power. So the key thing is that will it take it, Israel cannot do it alone. That's 100%. I think it's widely accepted. Can the U.S. do it? It has the capability, in terms of aircraft, in terms of technology, but can it do it completely? Would it be a temporary downgrading, just delaying the program, or can it take it out completely? And I think that's a big question that no one's really able to answer. The idea is now that you have Iran, for those who are proposing for more aggressive action, the idea is that you have in the 40 years of the existence, of over 40 years of existence of this regime, it's in its weakest point possible. Yes, at its very beginning, between 1980 and 88, you had the Iran-Iraq war, which was an existential threat to the new revolution back then. But I think after that, this is probably arguably and the weakest moment that this regime is confronting, whereby this existential threat will make it, and if you corner the regime, it can possibly use means beyond what, we spoke earlier, and one of your previous guests was discussed, things like closing of the Straits of Hormuz, potential bombing of oil facilities throughout the Gulf, is basically chaos in the region, particularly in the Persian Gulf area, that'll have global implications. So if you push this regime to the point, what will it collapse? Will it take desperate measures? Who will replace it? Can you kill the Ayatollah? Most of it is in a circle. Much of it is in a circle, has been killed. But that doesn't mean that there aren't others in the sidelines waiting to come in. So what right now the Trump administration and other Western countries, right now are basically they're questioning, and these are all open questions which they're struggling with right now. And what happens next? And anything is possible. The situation's in flux. So I think one has to be. Hopefully, rational minds will prevail. But in a situation like this, anything is possible.
All right, I've got so many other questions, but I'm afraid we are going to have to leave you there for now. Marco Vicenzino, Global Strategy Advisor and Geopolitical Risk Specialist, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Cheers.